Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to class number 7 of the Canto 2. We're on chapter 7. This is the scheduled incarnations of the Lord. Um, it's actually called, scheduled incarnations with specific functions. We had a list of incarnations, partial list, in Canto 1, chapter 3. We're going to have, I think, a longer one here. This is probably, we're going to do this chapter over 2 days. But
Two classes?
Yeah, 2 classes. Yeah. All right, and we'll start with some kirtan.
Rock devotees. So let's take a clearing breath to just let go of whatever was just engaging your consciousness to being here together now in Sangha, in spiritual family, community, putting ourselves in front of this transcendental sound vibration through kirtan, through katha. What a gift. Take a deep breath in, fill up. Open your mouth, exhale, let it go. Opening prayers. Let's open our hearts. Inhale. Om Jnanatamandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunamitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki, Shri Shri Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Gaur Nitai ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Brahma Bhakti Sangha and beyond ki, Shastra Study Group ki, Gaur Premanande Hari 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 Bol.
Om Jnana-timirantasya Jnananjana-shlakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Hare Bol. All right. We're a little more than halfway through the second canto, right? Maybe just about halfway through content-wise, because we have a couple of longer chapters ahead of us. So now's a good time to get some reflections. If you were on chapter 6, you read chapter 6, then reflect on that, and you can reflect otherwise on anything. There's so much in the second canto we've heard. What have you heard so far that's sticking out in your mind?
I'll go.
Yes, Mary, go ahead.
Shelter in the Lord, kind of like that Bob Dylan song. And Canto 2, verse 7, or text 7, and the purport talks about not being so fearful because you have Krishna to be your shelter. And not only in this world, but in the part that I really don't understand it is these other planets that I don't have a feel for yet in my mind. I just kind of feels like Cosmo or the great beyond, but he's the shelter no matter where you.
Yeah. I mean, even the descriptions that are there of the different, I think so far we've only been hearing about different material planets. Even those descriptions are partial. So it's not like even if we said, oh, I understand everything that's been described, which I also don't completely understand everything that's described. It's not even a full list. They're like summary descriptions of different strata, different gradations of planets, different gradations of living atmospheres. And you got the general, like the overall point, which is that no matter in what situation one is living in the material world, whether it's more or less opulent, higher or lower planets, it's all under the shelter of the Lord, and it's conceived as being on one part or another of His universal form, just another part of His creation. Yeah.
And that gives me a warm feeling for when things get scary in my world. I kind of kick back and, there's my shelter.
Yeah.
Don't get it out of your head and give it to Krishna to help me.
Yeah, if we operate under the premise that nobody's in control, it's pretty terrifying. And if we try to operate under the premise that I'm in control, it's good for the ego for a little bit. We feel like, oh, I am a big deal, and then it falls apart because we're not, of course, controlling much more than about this much, and recognizing that Krishna is in control is actually a very deep thing. So, practicing that in our day-to-day and moment-to-moment life is an ongoing thing, and it's always very, very sweet. Thank you. And to quote another Bob Dylan song, he's saying, "You got to serve somebody. You got to serve somebody, right?" That's what it's all about. Whether you're serving your own ego, you're serving some other person, you got to serve somebody. You just got to pick a master, one way or another. So, we're just trying to put credit where it's due and serve the Supreme. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, more reflections.
Hare Krishna, I'll give a reflection. And I apologize, I'm a little behind in my reading and reflecting. Partially because I have something weird going on with my eyes that's causing my vision to be blurry. But anyway, I listened to the class again this afternoon, and it's very like scientific and technical, and it's like just listening to it's like a sci-fi film, all the description of the the universal form. But the one thing I thought was really kind of interesting was in text 20, it talked about sex and family attachment being the most powerful attachment to material life, and how it talks about, as a brahmachari, if you, as a youth, you're celibate, then you're good, then you go have a family life, and then you get older and you're sannyasi, I think it is, and you go off and stop. And it kind of related it towards the men. And I was thinking, I wonder where women fall into this. But what kind of struck me was that in this culture, it's like we never stop being obsessed with sex, no matter what the age. I mean, women, they pump full of hormones, blah, blah, blah. Men, they give pump through full of Viagra. I mean, it just never, it's like, how do we ever get to this point in this culture unless we have this information? And maybe
Right.
it needs to be a little more widespread. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. And like for women through menopause, well, then you lose that desire and you lose that ability. And it kind of makes sense. Then you go on and you're more devoted to God. Then your kids are grown. You don't have desires for other things. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting statement is that that's the most powerful attachment to material life.
Yeah. A couple things. One, if you want any help or support around, like if your eyes or vision is blurry, let us know. I can get you in touch with like a audiobook copy of the Bhagavatam. You can
Oh,
do some,
nice.
and that you can just listen to. 1 and 2. So yeah, the that's Canto 2, chapter 6, verse 20. You're referring to the purport. Yeah. So the idea is that over the course of one's life, one is meant to kind of graduate beyond material attachments. When Prabhupada is talking in this purport about sex, he's also talking about like everything that goes along with it, like family life, right? And so all of the attachment to family and home, and that's that greater sense of identity, right? Beyond just this one body. Like we expand our own sense of identity through family, people who look like us and have the same last name, and
Right.
we have the circle, and that's incredibly powerful binding force, right? And it's necessary for human society. It's also necessary to like express responsibility through that so that we can work through our desires, but it's also necessary spiritually to graduate from them. So what you're talking about is like, yeah, we live in a society where, what to speak of being a responsible family person, it's not even about that. It's just about like enjoy through your senses as long as you possibly can, and that's considered successful. So it's quite revolutionary, actually. The idea that things have a time and place, and you're meant to go beyond that and get that out of your system and apply it in a responsible way, and then come to a place where you have played out your desires around all of that, including money and family and all that, so that you're ready to move upwards. And that's a very revolutionary message in the context of today's world. But it's very much kind of like a good metric to see how one is doing is how is one not necessarily right now completely renounced, but how is one progressing, And you can know you're progressing by developing an attachment to hearing. Because it's that attachment to hearing in these core spiritual practices and Sangha that actually gives that positive impetus to have a taste for something beyond just like trying to carve out a corner of the world. This is my corner, plant my flag here. These are my people, this is my family, right? It's the same thing that the animals are doing, but just in a more polished form. You have to have some taste as a living entity. You have to have some kind of, in Sanskrit we call it rasa, some enjoyment. And you're not going to get that, just like fiddling around and imagining something. You actually have to have it practically. So the attachment to hearing, especially in the association of devotees, that's what convinces the heart that there's something more. And then I'm ready to let go of just trying to seek meaning endlessly in, in family and sex and all those things. Otherwise, it's not possible. And we know it's not possible otherwise because we see people who don't have that, they just spin in circles. And it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Hare
Great
Krishna.
reflection. Great. More reflections. These are great. Let's keep them going. Eileen.
So I appreciate how like this chapter kind of progresses where, from a practical or scientific perspective, first we hear the Lord you know, and we talk about the cosmos and the universe. And I liked how you said that this is kind of how we can meditate on the impersonal. So yogi can meditate on the impersonal form first. And then as the yogi progresses, they start seeing the universe almost as personhood. And then they can see Krishna as how his form in the world is. And so you kind of can go from like kind of the more abstract understanding how great and grand the universe is. And yes, there is a God, because this is just insane. And then it just continues to get a little more saturated till you see Krishna as a person instead of being impersonal. So I liked the idea of like, why do we hear all these descriptions? It's kind of like a way that people can progress through, you know, the ladder of bhakti.
Yeah, it's giving access. You know, he does the same thing Krishna does in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita when Arjuna asks, how can I know you and see you in the world? And Krishna says, I'll give you a partial description of some of my manifestations, you know, among luminous objects on the sun, among the bodies of water in the ocean, et cetera, because from his point of view, he's everything. And our problem is that we don't see that. And so he's there as a person speaking to Arjuna, and he is essentially, ultimately, a person from whom all these energies emanate. But our problem is that we need a helping hand. So all these descriptions about the universe, they're relevant for us in the material world. You know, you can imagine if you're in the spiritual world, like relating to Krishna face to face, it's no longer relevant what's happening in some corner of a material universe with this, that. But for us, we're deeply entangled in all of this. We really think, we really in our heart of hearts believe like this is just stuff for me to take and like conquer and explore, and it's all just separate from even the idea of God, if we have that. And this is Krishna trying to like mesh those two. It's like, don't have a spiritual life and a material life. It's all me. Like, here's how you can start to see that, right? It's not like here's one thing and here's another thing. It's actually all part of Krishna, and here's how you can start to see that. It's like here's the clouds and the mountains and the trees, and here's the universe and different planetary systems. And the second last verse of the sixth chapter was Brahma listing so many different kinds of living entities, the leaders of the Vidyadhara planets, the Udagas, Yakshas, Rakshas, great sages, great demons, evil spirits, Satans, jinns, great aquatics, etc. Some we see, some we don't see. And he's saying all of them may appear to be the specific truth and form of the Lord, but they're not. They're only a fragment of the transcendental potency. So it's just kind of like over and over again in these bhakti scriptures, casting a net to kind of drag us closer and closer to a more of a connected understanding of Krishna consciousness instead of a disconnected one. Because if it's disconnected, what happens is that people will have their own impetus from their karma. They'll just act in the world, you know, all more or less unconsciously, thinking like this isn't part of my spiritual life. There's nothing spiritual here. Family, friends, money, this is all just something I have to do. Or they either act unconsciously or they give it up unconsciously. But they never actually connect it. And that's a problem because then they're Krishna conscious like what percent of their day, you know? And so yeah. Yeah. So it's Krishna trying to thread that and create little cross fibers. So it's a tapestry, and it can hold us in the moment-to-moment experience. Because it's true, like there's nothing outside of him. Nothing. Otherwise, how could a deity manifest out of wood and we have an experience with that deity? How could sound that's coming out of my mouth, there's nothing but like saliva and air, you know, and known English letters create a transcendental effect. And the reality is it's all coming from Krishna, so he wants it to be possible that way, right? So even these material elements can become spiritual if engaged with properly. So, thank you.
Similar to that, like you're saying that we're dealing with Krishna's energy and everything. I loved the description, and I think it was the purport of verse 10 around how if you see Krishna from his backside, then you're seeing the impersonal form. You see him from his front side,
Yeah.
then you're seeing the personal form. It was like really blowing my mind the way that, again, it was reinforced, this description of his body, you know, and the way in which we can experience him.
Yeah. Yeah. It also said his backside is irreligion and ignorance, you know, and his front side is actual dharma and knowledge. So even if someone is in the darkest ignorance, they're also being facilitated in that by him. That's also an experience he's facilitating, right? He can turn the light switch on or off, you know?
That like true tapestry is not pretty. And the front side of the tapestry is
Right.
pretty, so-
That's a good extension of the analogy. The backside of the tapestry is just like a mess. You can't understand what it looks supposed to look like. It looks random.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any more reflections? Okay. Let's jump into chapter 7. The end of chapter 6, Brahma said, O Narada, now I shall state one after another the transcendental incarnations of the Lord known as Leela avatars. Hearing of their activities counteracts all foul matters accumulated in the ear. These pastimes are pleasing to hear and are to be relished. Therefore, they are in my heart. Chapter 7, Scheduled incarnations with specific functions. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Vasudevaya.
Verse 1, Lord Brahma said, when the unlimitedly powerful Lord assumed the form of a boar as a pastime, just to lift the planet Earth, which was drowned in the great ocean of the universe called the Garbhodaka, the first demon, Hiranyaksha, appeared, and the Lord pierced him with his tusk. Purport. Since the beginning of creation, the demons and the demigods, or the Vaishnavas, are always the two classes of living beings to dominate the planets of the universe. Lord Brahma is the first demigod, and Hiranyaksha is the first demon in this universe. Only under certain conditions do the planets float as weightless balls in the air. And as soon as these conditions are disturbed, the planets may fall down in the Garbhodaka ocean, which covers half the universe.
Did he compare Vaishnavas to demigods?
Yeah. The floating of the planets in the weightless air is due to the inner constitution of the globes, and the modernized drilling of the Earth to exploit oil from within is a sort of disturbance by the modern demons and can result in a greatly harmful reaction to the floating condition of the Earth. A similar disturbance was created formerly by the demons headed by Hiranyaksha, the great exploiter of the gold rush. And the Earth was detached from its weightless condition and fell down into the Garbhodaka ocean. This pastime is described in more detail in Canto 3. 4? 3. And the summary that Prabhupada's giving here is that Hiranyaksha considered the resources. This is Hiranyakashipu's brother, by the way. If you're familiar with Hiranyakashipu, Prahlad Maharaj's father, famous demon who was killed by Nrsingadev, his brother was killed first. His brother was also of a similar mentality. He viewed everything in the universe as available for personal conquest. And Prabhupada is comparing the exploitation of planet Earth for oil to Hiranyaksha's activities that resulted in the displacement of the Earth planet and required Krishna to intervene in the form of Varahadev, the boar incarnation. The Lord, as maintainer of the whole creation of the material world, therefore assumed the gigantic form of a boar with a proportionate snout and picked up the earth from within the water of Garbhodaka. Sri Jayadev Goswami, the great Vaishnava poet, sang as follows. Vasatitishana shikare tarani tavalagna shashinikalanka kaleva nimagna Keshavatrita shukara rupa jaya jagadisha hare. O Keshava, O Supreme Lord, who have assumed the form of a boar, O Lord, the planet Earth rested on your tusks, and it appeared like the moon engraved with spots. Such is the symptom of an incarnation of the Lord. The incarnation of the Lord is not the concocted idea of fanciful men who create an incarnation out of imagination. The incarnation of the Lord appears under certain extraordinary circumstances, like the above-mentioned occasion, and the incarnation performs a task which is not even imaginable by the tiny brain of mankind. The modern creators of the many cheap incarnations may take note of the factual incarnation of God as the gigantic boar with a suitable snout to carry the planet Earth. When the Lord appeared to pick up the earth, the demon of the name Hiranyaksha tried to create a disturbance in the methodical functions of the Lord, and therefore he was killed by being pierced with the Lord's tusk. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the demon Hiranyaksha was killed by the hand of the Lord. Therefore, his version is that after being killed by the hand of the Lord, the demon was pierced by the tusk. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur confirms this version. There's two. The Prajapati first begot Suyagya in the womb of his wife, Akuti, and then Suyagya begot demigods, headed by Suyama, in the womb of his wife, Dakshina. Suyagya, as the Indradeva, diminished very great miseries in the three planetary systems, upper, lower, and intermediate. And because he so diminished the miseries of the universe, he was later called Hari by the great father of mankind, namely Swayambhuva Manu. Purport. To guard against the invention of unauthorized incarnations of God by the fanciful, less intelligent persons, the name of the father of the bona fide incarnation is also mentioned in the authorized revealed scriptures. No one therefore can be accepted as an incarnation of the Lord if his father's name, as well as the name of the village or place in which he appears, is not mentioned by the authorized scriptures. In the Bhagavad Purana, the name of the Kalki incarnation, which is to take place almost 400,000 years, is mentioned, along with the name of his father and the name of the village in which he will appear, his mother too. A sane man therefore does not accept any cheap edition of an incarnation without reference to the authorized scriptures. 3. The Lord then appeared as the Kapila incarnation, being the son of the Prajapati Brahmana Kardama and his wife Devahuti, along with 9 other women, sisters. He spoke to his mother about self-realization, by which, in that very lifetime, she became fully cleansed of the mud of the material modes and thereby achieved liberation, the path of Kapila. Purport. The instructions of Lord Kapila to his mother Devahuti are fully described in the 3rd canto, chapters 25 to 32 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and anyone who follows the instructions can achieve the same liberation obtained by Devahuti. It's a long section. It's a very, very powerful section. Pretty famous. Chapter 25 especially is very famous. There's a lot of really nice instructions that Kapila gives to his mother. The Lord spoke Bhagavad Gita, and thereby Arjuna achieved self-realization. And even today, anyone who follows the path of Arjuna can obtain also the same benefit as Sri Arjuna. So, by extension, anything that he spoke to Arjuna was good then and is good now. And his conversation with Devahuti as the incarnation Kapila is also still very relevant today.
Why did Kapila come down?
Why? A few reasons. His parents were great devotees. His mother, Devahuti, knew that her husband was going to take sannyas and leave, and she said, I'll agree to this marriage. She picked him as a husband. And she agreed to the marriage on the condition that if he's going to take sannyas, he has to give birth to a son who will instruct her in all the spiritual knowledge that he has. And so powerful was her desire that Krishna came in that form as her son and instructed her as an incarnation, her own son, after the father had left. The father knew who this boy was, but the Leela had to go the way it had to go, and he left, meditating on the Lord. And the son stayed there and instructed her in the absence of her husband, his father. And the instructions are very lengthy and very powerful. So there's maybe other reasons too, I forget. But, Krishna usually accomplishes 3 to 4 things with every appearance at least. Certainly his instructions as Kapila are highly relevant today, so they had to be spoken at some point, and that was when he chose to speak them. Foolish, unintelligent persons make their own interpretations by imagination and thus mislead their followers, causing them to remain in the dungeon of material existence. However, simply by following the instructions imparted by Lord Krishna or Lord Kapila, one can obtain the highest benefit even today. The word Atmagatim is significant. One should not be satisfied simply by knowing the qualitative equality of the Lord and the living being. One should know the Lord as much as can be known by our limited knowledge. It is impossible for the Lord to be known perfectly as he is, even by such liberated persons as Shiva or Brahma. So what to speak of other demigods or men in this world? Still, by following the principles of the great devotees and the instructions available in the scriptures, one can know to a considerable extent the features of the Lord. In his lordship, Kapila, the incarnation of the Lord, instructed his mother fully about the personal form of the Lord, and thereby she realized the personal form of the Lord, and was able to achieve a place in the Vaikuntha Loka, where Lord Kapila predominates. Every incarnation of the Lord has his own abode in the spiritual sky. Therefore, Lord Kapila also has his separate Vaikuntha planet. The spiritual sky is not void. There are innumerable Vaikuntha planets, and in each of them the Lord, by his innumerable expansions, predominates. and the pure devotees who are there also live in the same style as the Lord and his eternal associates. When the Lord descends personally or by his personal plenary expansions, such incarnations are called Angsha, Kala, Guna, Yuga, and Manvantara incarnations. Different kinds of incarnations, right? And when the Lord's associates descend by the order of the Lord, such incarnations are called Shakti-avesha incarnations. But in all such cases, all the incarnations are supported by the invulnerable statements of the authorized scriptures and not by any imagination of some self-interested propagandist. Such incarnations of the Lord in either of the above categories always declare the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be the ultimate truth. The impersonal conception of the Supreme Truth is just a process of negation of the form of the Lord from the mundane conception of the Supreme Truth. That means the idea of the Lord as, like, some statements are there in the scripture that the Lord has no form. Or like, for example, statements that are contradictory, like in the Ishopanishad, he walks, but he does not walk, right? And so what Prabhupada is saying is that those statements are there so that the advancing speculator who is trying to understand with the force of their own intelligence can start to get it through their head that they're not dealing with a form like we're dealing with here, right? It's not made of matter and flesh and blood. It has a beginning. It was born. It was small and it grew, and later it gets old and wrinkled, and it's not like that. And so all these contradictions are there, and the negation of the idea of form is there, so that one doesn't understand the Lord as having a material form. And at the same time, there is descriptions of his spiritual form. So that understanding of the Lord as ultimately a person with a spiritual form is the highest understanding. And Prabhupada's pointing out that that was the ultimate fruit, the ultimate conclusion of Kapila's instructions to his mother. The living entities, by their very constitution, are spiritually as good as the Lord, and the only difference between them is that the Lord is always supreme and pure, without contamination by the modes of material nature, whereas the living entities are apt to be contaminated by association with the material modes. This contamination by the material modes can be washed off completely by knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service. Devotional service to the Lord is the ultimate issue. And therefore, those who are directly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord not only acquire the necessary knowledge in spiritual science, but also attain detachment from material connection and are thus promoted to the kingdom of God by complete liberation, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Even in the non-liberated stage, a living entity can be directly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, or his plenary expansions like Rama and Narasimha. Thus, with the proportionate improvement of such transcendental loving devotional service, the devotee makes definite progress toward Brahma Gatim or Atma Gatim, and ultimately attains Kapilasya Gatim, or the abode of the Lord, without difficulty. The antiseptic potency of devotional service to the Lord is so great that it can neutralize the material infection even in the present life of a devotee. A devotee does not need to wait for their next birth for complete liberation. Text 4. The great sage Atri prayed for offspring, and the Lord, being satisfied with him, promised to incarnate as Atri's son, Dattatreya, Datta, the son of Atri. And by the grace of the lotus feet of the Lord, many yadus, haihayas, etc., became so purified that they obtained both material and spiritual blessings. From the purport, transcendental relations between the personality of Godhead and the living entities are eternally established in 5 different affectionate humors, which are known as Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. The sage Atri was related with the Lord in the affectionate Vatsalya humor, and therefore, as a result of his devotional perfection, he was inclined to have the personality of Godhead as his son. The Lord accepted his prayer, and he gave himself as the son of Atri. Such a relation of sonhood between the Lord and his pure devotee can be cited in many instances, as with Kapila and Devahuti, right? And because the Lord is unlimited, he has an unlimited number of father devotees and mother devotees. Factually, the Lord is the father of all living entities. But out of transcendental affection and love between the Lord and his devotees, the Lord takes more pleasure in becoming the son of a devotee than becoming one's father. The father actually serves the son, whereas the son only demands all sorts of services from the father. Therefore, a pure devotee who is always inclined to serve the Lord wants him as the son and not as the father. right? Because they can do more service. They can dote on them and spoil them and look after them and worry about them. Just think about how much anxiety Mother Yashoda is in all the time. Krishna is just sitting there stealing and eating and crying and doing all the kid things, and she's like constantly trying to serve him. That's the ecstasy of parental affection. The Lord also accepts such service from the Lord, and thus the devotee becomes more than the Lord. The impersonalists desire to become one with the Supreme, but the devotees become more than the Lord, surpassing the desire of the greatest monist. Okay, text 5. To create different planetary systems, I had to undergo, this is Brahma speaking, I had to undergo austerities and penance. And the Lord, thus being pleased with me, incarnated in 4 sanas, Sanaka, Sanat Kumara, Sanandana, and Sanatana. In the previous creation, the spiritual truth was devastated, but the 4 sanas explained it so nicely that the truth at once became clearly perceived by the sages.
Were these 4 separate incarnations, or did they?
They're sometimes counted as one,
Okay.
but they're 4 different persons. They have 4 different names. They're let's see if Prabhupada talks about them a little bit. Yeah, they're considered like a package
Package deal.
because they appeared all at the same time for the same purpose. From the purport, the word son is also used in the sense of charity. Okay. Brahmaji wanted to create the whole cosmic situation as it was in the previous millennium, and because in the last devastation, knowledge of the absolute truth was altogether erased from the universe, he desired that the same knowledge again be renovated. Otherwise, there would be no meaning in the creation. Because transcendental knowledge is a prime necessity, the ever-conditioned souls are given a chance for liberation in every millennium of creation. This mission of Brahmaji was fulfilled by the grace of the Lord when the 4 sanas, Sanaka, Sanat Kumar, Sanandan, and Sanatan, appeared as his 4 sons. These 4 sanas were incarnations of the knowledge of the Supreme Lord. And as such, they explained transcendental knowledge so explicitly that all the sages could at once assimilate this knowledge without the least difficulty. The 4 Kumaras they're called because they're.
This is the 4 Kumaras.
Yeah, Kumar means young boy. The 4 Kumaras, these 4 personalities, they appeared as young boys and they never aged. Yeah. They stayed naked, never wearing clothes, never growing up. They refused to enter into material life. Not out of a childish Peter Pan desire to play forever, but because they never wanted to become entangled with illusion. And they're specifically empowered to share transcendental knowledge, being what's called specific incarnations of Krishna's Gyan function, knowledge function. And so they share knowledge explicitly in different places. Throughout the Bhagavatam, they're also heads of their own sampradaya. Like Brahma is the origin, after Krishna, of our particular sampradaya, through which Madhvacharya appears and later Lord Chaitanya appears. There's another sampradaya, the Kumar sampradaya. And in that sampradaya, it's taking its root from the instructions they received from Krishna because they're pure devotees. So this is a summary description of them. But they're going to actually appear later in the Bhagavatam.
I think there was a past time were they going to the heavenly planets and they got denied?
Yeah, Canto 3. They're trying to enter the spiritual world, and they're denied by the gatekeepers Jai and Vijaya, and so they curse them. And Vishnu comes, and resolves it all. But that's how Jai and Vijaya had to come back as demons.
Right. So that's where Anikashipu and
Hiranyaksha.
Yeah. Jai and Vijay.
They're personal associates of the Lord who were forced by the power of the Kumara's curse in the Leela. They're forced to come and take birth as demoniac, like inimical personalities.
Is it also the 4 Kumaras that were like more impersonalist until
they kind of were at that point? They kind of were a little bit. They hadn't concluded that the supreme source is ultimately impersonal, but
Krishna's lotus feet.
But they became attracted by the smell of the tulsi flowers on Krishna's feet. The personal qualities of the Lord intoxicated them and made them fall in love with him. As it did with Shukadeva Goswami, who was born fully realized in impersonal knowledge, a grown man, and he left to wander. It was the sound vibration of the Bhagavatam uttered by the people that his father hired to sing it in the forest to attract him back, actually like entered his ears and made him fall in love with Krishna. because it's a directly devotional scripture. That's something that happens sometimes. Impersonal. Some devotees can be temporarily impersonalists and they graduate to personal realization. Yeah. Verse 6. To exhibit his personal way of austerity and penance, he appeared in twin forms as Narayana and Nara, in the womb of Murti, the wife of Dharma, and the daughter of Daksha. Celestial beauties, the companions of Cupid, went to try to break his vows, but they were unsuccessful, for they saw that many beauties like them were emanating from him, the personality of Godhead. This is another purport about becoming free from sex desire. Because Naranarayana, this incarnation, is exhibiting Krishna's power of austerity and penance. And at one point, as the verse points out, somebody sent some angelic beauties to try to attract him away. But he's actually an incarnation of the Lord, so anything that's beautiful is coming from him in the first place. And he demonstrated indifference. In fact, it's a longer pastime we won't get into right now, but it's there in Canto 12. Verse 7. Great stalwarts, yeah, this is continuing the same idea. Great stalwarts like Lord Shiva can, by their wrathful glances, overcome lust and vanquish him, yet they cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of their own wrath. Such wrath can never enter into the heart of him, the Lord, who is above all this. So how can lust take shelter in his mind? Verse 8. Being insulted by sharp words spoken by the co-wife of the king, even in his presence, Prince Dhruva, though only a boy, took to severe penances in the forest. And the Lord, being satisfied by his prayer, awarded him the Dhruva planet, which is worshipped by great sages, both upward and downward. This pastime is in Canto 4, famous pastime. Prabhupada talks about it in summary in the purport. When he was only 5 years old, Prince Dhruva, a great devotee and the son of Maharaj Uttanapad, he's a prince, his father's a king, was sitting on the lap of his father. His stepmother did not like the king's patting her stepson, so she dragged him out, saying he could not claim to sit on the lap of the king because he was not born out of her womb. Because she was having some power struggle with her co-wife. She didn't like her stepson. The little boy felt insulted by this act of her stepmother, nor did the father make any protest, for he was too attached to the second wife. After this incident, Prince Dhruva went to his own mother and complained. His real mother also could not take any step against this insulting behavior, and so she wept. The boy inquired from his mother how he could sit on the royal throne of his father, and the poor queen replied that only the Lord could help him. The boy inquired where the Lord could be seen, and the queen replied that it is said that the Lord is sometimes seen by great sages in the dense forest. The child prince decided to go into the forest to perform severe penances in order to achieve his objective. Prince Dhruva performed a stringent type of penance under the instruction of his spiritual master Sri Narada Muni, who was specifically deputed for this purpose by the personality of Godhead. Prince Dhruva was initiated by Narada into chanting the hymn composed of 18 letters, namely Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And Lord Vasudeva incarnated himself as Prishnigarpa, the personality of Godhead, with 4 hands, and awarded the prince a specific planet above the 7 stars. Prince Dhruva, after achieving success in his undertaking, saw the Lord face to face, and he was satisfied that all his needs were fulfilled. Verse 9. Maharaj Vena went astray from the path of righteousness, and the Brahmanas chastised him by the thunderbolt curse. By this, King Vena was burnt with his good deeds and opulence, and was en route to hell. The Lord, by his causeless mercy, descended as his son by the name of Prithu, delivered the condemned King Vena from hell, and exploited the earth by drawing all kinds of crops as produce. Also in Canto 4, this pastime in a more elaborate shape.
Wait, what does that mean? Exploited the earth by dry, like this is how crops originated?
Not that they originated, but Prithu is a particular incarnation who's empowered with leadership potency. And he came in the wake of his father Vena, who was one of the all-time worst leaders. So bad that the Brahmanas, the spiritual leaders, actually had to intervene and kill him, which they almost never do. They killed him with mantra. And Prithu came as his son, led, and the description is there in the fourth canto in the description of subsequent activities of Prithu that he is instituting a system of dharma that was so beneficial for everybody that even the planet was very readily and easily giving up so much resources. It was making it very easy to live. Everyone had opulence. The seasons were very forgiving. The weather, people lived a long time. The natural opulences of gems and so forth were very forthcoming because his rule was so pious and so dharmic. So that's in summary form what's being described in that line. Prabhupada's going to talk about it a bit in the purport about how Maharashvena was deposed and then Maharaj Prithu came. Yeah. Maharaj Prithu, the incarnation of God, descended by the prayer of the Brahmanas to rectify the disorders on earth. He produced all kinds of crops. But at the same time, he performed the duty of a son who delivers his father from hellish conditions. The word putra means one who delivers from hell, called put. That is a worthy son. Even though his father was a terrible person, he as Krishna, he comes and he redeems him. Verse 10. Just verse by verse, there's like completely different pastimes.
Yeah.
There's Canto 3, Canto 4, Canto 7. So we're getting little tidbits. This is all very...
Does it jump ahead to farther cantos?
Because the cantos are not... I think these descriptions are more chronological right now. If I'm not mistaken. I have to go look back. I think that's what the logic is. And in the Bhagavatam, the cantos are not chronological. They're described in order of when they happen to come up in conversation for different, they're topical.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Some sections are chronological. They don't jump again to another section before, after, or parallel to, because it's about, it's not a chronology, it's not a history book, although it contains history. I'm pretty sure that these are actually, pretty sure these are chronological. The same thing is there in Canto 1, Chapter 3, where the list is mostly chronological, because they are it's a historical list, although partial. So yeah, the answer to your question is that there's different reasons. Although this section is a historical reason for sharing the partial list of incarnations, mostly we're not dealing with the historical account. We're dealing with Leela.
I do. I like having the order, and then I understand he's having a conversation.
Yeah.
I like knowing the order, so this is really nice.
Yeah. It's kind of like in having a conversation with someone, you say, "Oh, let me give you the backstory, though."
Right, that happens all the time in Bhagavatam. It's like, oh yeah, this reminds me of something else that was spoken in this other thing, and then you jump to that, and it's like 700 million years ago, but the topic is exactly the same.
Yeah.
Right? That happens so often where it's because the etiquette of devotees is to cite authority. They're like, well, actually, this question has already been asked. I'm not going to speak anything new. I'll just quote to you what's already been described by my own spiritual teachers who spoke this so many years ago. So that happens a lot. Okay. Verse 10. The Lord appeared as the son of Sudevi, the wife of King Nabi, and was known as Rishabhadeva. This is Canto 5. He performed materialistic yoga to equibalance the mind. This stage is also accepted as the highest perfectional situation of liberation, wherein one is situated in oneself and is completely satisfied. Purport. Out of many types of mystic performances for self-realization, the process of Jada Yoga is also one accepted by authorities. This Jada Yoga involves practicing becoming like a dumb stone and not being affected by material reactions. Just as a stone is indifferent to all kinds of attacks and reattacks of external situations. Similarly, one practices Jada Yoga by tolerating voluntary infliction of pain upon the material body. Such yogis, out of many self-infliction methods, practice plucking out the hairs on their heads, without shaving and without any instrumental help. But the real purpose of such Jada Yoga practice is to get free from all material affection and to be completely situated in the self. At the last stage of his life, Emperor Rishabhadev wandered like a dumb madman, unaffected by all kinds of bodily mistreatment. Seeing him like a madman, wandering naked with long hair and a long beard, less intelligent children and men in the street used to spit on him and urinate on his body. He used to lie in his own stool and never move, but the stool of his body was fragrant like the smell of fragrant flowers. And a saintly person would recognize him as a Paramahamsa, one in the highest state of human perfection. One who is not able to make their stool fragrant should not, however, imitate Emperor Rishabhadeva. The practice of Jada Yoga was possible for Rishabhadeva and others on the same level of perfection, but such an uncommon practice is impossible for an ordinary man.
The Jada yoga, is that what you Jada
Yeah.
yoga? Right, not as popular probably today as like
It's
laughing
impossible.
yoga, goat yoga.
Well, you find some people in the Himalayas who do. They do like
Jada yoga.
they'll wait till the winter and go in cold water. Or they'll stand in the middle of like
No,
fire in the middle of the summer just to become
that's-
indifferent.
that's Jada yoga.
It's severe austerities. You know, it's part of the path, but it's completely unreasonable,
Yeah.
because as Prabhupada points out here, the whole process of yoga, under whatever heading it may be, is to control the unbridled material senses and thus prepare oneself for self-realization. In this age specifically, this Jada Yoga cannot be of any practical value, but on the other hand, the practice of Bhakti Yoga is feasible because it is just suitable for this age. So Rishabhadeva was not in this age.
Right.
And before he manifested this last part of his life, he gave very practical instructions to his sons. He had 100 sons. 90 of them became householders. 10 of them became sannyasis. And he gave instructions to all of them in Canto 5, Chapter 5. Famous chapter, famous instructions, before he wandered off. And so he's more famous for that, actually, than he is for this. Because that's actually relatable for us.
So it's like when yogis like walk on coals, or walk on.
Yeah, because
is that Jada or is that
it's
mystic?
the point is, under whatever umbrella you call it, quote, the whole process of yoga, under whatever heading it may be, is to control the unbridled material senses and thus prepare oneself for self-realization. So we don't do that because we control our senses by asking help from Krishna.
Right.
Anybody who's walking on coals is trying to try to control their senses through austerity.
Right.
Right?
Which is
Generally,
really meant for a different age.
yeah. Generally, what we find is that they end up becoming satisfied with something less than self-realization.
Mm-hmm.
They end up becoming satisfied with some mystic power because the dormant material desires in their heart, like it's like entering into a contract with the material universe. Like, I'm performing all these austerities, you have to pay me back. The demigods are like, hey, what do you want? So basically you get what you want. And if your heart is not pure, you just ask for a longer life or better sex or powerful body or demigod or travel or shape-shifting or control people's minds or whatever kind of yogic power you want. And after many lifetimes of doing that, you might get it. And so it's one of the pitfalls of that kind of indirect process is that it never actually purifies the heart completely, although it may create detachment from the senses. Hiranyakashipu actually engaged in this kind of yoga in Canto 7, and he earned the benedictions he was given by Brahma of practical immortality. Not exactly immortality, but like incredibly powerful body, long life, blah, blah, blah. So, but he wasn't a devotee. He had no interest in Krishna. So, don't try this at home. Verse 11. The Lord appeared as the Hayagriva incarnation in the sacrifice performed by me, Brahma. He is the personified sacrifices, and the hue of his body is golden. He is the personified Vedas as well, and the supersoul of all demigods. When he breathed, all the sweet sounds of the Vedic hymns came out of his nostrils. 12. At the end of the millennium, the would-be Vaivasvata Manu of the name Satyavrata would see that the Lord in his fish incarnation is the shelter of all kinds of living entities, up to those in the earthly planets. Because of my fear of the vast water at the end of the millennium, the Vedas came out of my, Brahma's, mouth. And the Lord enjoys those vast waters and protects the Vedas. Purport. During one day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus, and at the end of each Manu, there is devastation up to the earthly planets, and the vast water is fearful even to Brahma. So in the beginning of the would-be Vaibhasvata Manu, such devastation would be seen by him. There will be many other incidents also, such as the killing of the famous Shankasura. This foretelling is by the past experience of Brahmaji, who knew that in that fearful, devastating scene, the Vedas would come out of his mouth. But the Lord in his fish incarnation not only would save all living entities, namely the demigods, animals, men, and great sages, but it would also save the Vedas. This is it's a Noah's Ark biblical flood type thing, which is actually found in a lot of traditions. It's described in more elaborate form in Canto 8. Verse 13, the primeval Lord then assumed the tortoise incarnation in order to serve as a resting place, pivot, for the Mandara mountain, which was acting as a churning rod. The demigods and demons were churning the ocean of milk with the Mandara mountain in order to extract nectar. The mountain moved back and forth, scratching the back of the Lord tortoise, who while partially sleeping was experiencing an itching sensation. This is Canto 6. No, this is Canto 8. Canto 8.
What's the name of the tortoise?
Kurma.
How do you spell that?
Kurma. 14. The personality of Godhead assumed the incarnation of Nrsimhadev in order to vanquish the great fears of the demigods. He killed the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, who challenged the Lord with a club in his hand by placing the demon on his thighs and piercing him with his nails, rolling his eyebrows in anger and showing his fearful teeth and mouth. This is, of course, Canto 7. Canto 7. We're reading that on Friday mornings. We're reading Canto 7, Chapter 9, Prahlad's Prayers. Verse 15. The leader of the elephants, whose leg was attacked in a river by a crocodile of superior strength, was much aggrieved. Taking a lotus flower in his trunk, he addressed the Lord, saying, O original enjoyer, Lord of the universe, O deliverer, as famous as a place of pilgrimage, all are purified simply by hearing your holy name, which is worthy to be chanted. This is also in Canto 8. And the Lord came to him when he was praying in that form, although he was just an elephant. The personality of Godhead, after hearing the elephant's plea, felt that the elephant needed his immediate help, for he was in great distress. Thus at once the Lord appeared there on the wings of the king of birds, Garuda, fully equipped with his weapon, the wheel, Chakra. With the wheel he cut to pieces the mouth of the crocodile to save the elephant, and he delivered the elephant by lifting him by his trunk. 17. The Lord, although transcendental to all material modes, still surpassed all the qualities of the sons of Aditi, known as the Adityas. The Lord appeared as the youngest son of Aditi, and because he surpassed all the planets of the universe, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. On the pretense of asking for a measurement of 3 footsteps of land, he took away all the lands of Bali Maharaj. He asked simply because without begging, no authority can take one's rightful possession. Also Canto 8, the dwarf incarnation. 18. Bali Maharaj, who put on his head the water washed from the lotus feet of the Lord, did not think of anything besides his promise, in spite of being forbidden by his spiritual master. The king dedicated his own personal body to fulfill the measurement of the Lord's 3rd step. For such a personality, even the kingdom of heaven, which he conquered by his strength, was of no value. 19. O Narada, you were taught about the science of God and his transcendental loving service by the personality of Godhead in his incarnation of Hamsa Avatara. He was very much pleased with you due to your intense proportion of devotional service. He also explained unto you lucidly the full science of devotional service, which is especially understandable by persons who are souls surrendered unto Lord Vasudeva, the supreme personality of Godhead. 20. As the incarnation of Manu, the Lord became the descendant of the Manu dynasty and ruled over the miscreant kingly order, subduing them by his powerful wheel weapon. Undeterred in all circumstances, his rule was characterized by his glorious fame, which spread over the 3 lokas, and above them to the planetary system of Satyaloka, the topmost in the universe. From the purport, we have already discussed the incarnations of Manu in the 1st canto. In one day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus, changing one after another. In that way, there are 420 Manus in a month of Brahma, and 5,040 Manus in 1 year of Brahma. Brahma lives for 100 years according to his calculation, and as such, there are 504,000 Manus in the jurisdiction of one Brahma. There are innumerable Brahmas, and all of them live only during one breathing period of Mahavishnu. So we can just imagine how the incarnations of the Supreme Lord work all over the material worlds, which comprehend only 1/4 of the total energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Manvantara incarnation, or Manu Avatara, Manu incarnation, chastises all the miscreant rulers of different planets with as much power as that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who punishes the miscreants with his wheel weapon. The Manvantara incarnations disseminate the transcendental glories of the Lord. 21. Lord, in his incarnation of Dhanvantari, very quickly cures the diseases of the ever-diseased living entities simply by his fame personified. And only because of him do the demigods achieve long lives. Thus the personality of Godhead becomes ever glorified. He also exacted a share from the sacrifices, and it is he only who inaugurated the medical science, or the knowledge of medicine in the universe. From the purport, as stated in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, everything emanates from the ultimate source of the personality of Godhead. It is therefore understood in this verse that the medical science, or knowledge in medicine, was also inaugurated by the personality of Godhead in his incarnation, Dhanvantari, and thus the knowledge is recorded in the Vedas. Ayushya Vedam, or Ayurvedam, which literally means the knowledge of life. Biology. Biology is Greek for Ayurveda, knowledge of life. Bios, logos, life sciences, knowledge of life and how to prolong it and maintain it. The Vedas are the source of all knowledge, and thus knowledge in medical science is also there for the perfect cure of the diseases of the living entity. The embodied living entity is diseased by the very construction of their body. The body is the symbol of diseases. The disease may differ from one variety to another, but disease must be there, just as there is birth and death for everyone. So, by the grace of the personality of Godhead, not only are diseases of the body and mind cured, but also the soul is relieved of the constant repetition of birth and death. The name of the Lord is also called Bhavaushati, or the source of curing of the disease of material existence.
Is that's who we pray to when we go to GEV, right?
Yeah.
They do the
Everybody's
prayer, yeah.
Then they have
Inventory,
a
and the
Murti
little,
of,
yeah.
Yeah, for health.
yeah.
Okay.
They have a Murti of Dhanvantari.
All right, we're going to pause here because we're not going to get through the whole chapter today. My plan was to go halfway. We're about halfway. We'll finish the chapter next week, and we'll take any reflections or questions, comments, anything you heard.
I mean, I know we have no concept of God's time,
Mhm.
like Christian's time, but like, we just went through like 21 different incarnations. What kind of span of time are we talking here, and how many yugas, and can you give us some sort of?
All right, let's see. Let's see this list. Okay. Varahadev. Yeah, I mean, even answering that question is not exactly clear because, for example, the very first incarnation, Varahadev, Jiva Goswami points out that the descriptions of Varahadev in the Bhagavatam are two different pastimes. One is saving the planet from devastation. One is killing Hiranyaksha. He doesn't do both of them at the same time. He kind of does, but there's two different descriptions. And so there's more than one Varahadev incarnation.
And
And
does Dave just come and stay and hang out somewhere?
No,
until he
he
comes and goes.
he comes and goes, and he comes again and goes again.
Okay.
So the spans of time, the multiple yugas. A yuga is 4.32 million years. Multiple yugas. Like the Chatur Yuga, 4.3. Like in a day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus, right? And a day of Brahma is 4.32 billion years. And every one of those Manus is considered an incarnation. and they're mentioned in summary by one verse, which is talking about what the Manu avatars do in general. I just read that one. It's like verse 20 or something. And then, like, hold on. What was the one about Matsya?
Fish.
Yeah. Griva,
The end-
tortoise, 12.
end of the-
So in the purport, Prabhupada points out that, yeah, during one day of Brahma, there are 14 manus. At the end of each manu, there's a partial devastation. And then, in the beginning of one manu, Vaivasvata Manu's rule, Matsya came. So that's like, I don't know, actually, that happens every time there's a devastation due to a flood. It's not clear.
So basically, you can take away from it that this is billions and billions and billions of years. And so when we say, like, I'm just laughing because it's like, when we say, well, why isn't Krishna coming right now? You know what I mean? And it's because, like, we're only in, a few 100,000 years, right, of this yuga. And it's like, this was billions of years.
Yeah, the scale is gigantic. It is literally billions of years. I mean, Brahma's whole life is 311 trillion years and 80 billion. And over that, there's 5,040 Manu incarnations. But to be fair about our situation, we're living like an eye blank after Lord Chaitanya. And the Sankirtan movement is very much in its, not even in its full flower, like it's growing, it's budding. So the incarnation that's particularly relevant for us is Lord Chaitanya and the sound incarnation of Krishna's name. And we're like riding the first waves of that. So we're actually very well situated.
Yeah.
But
I had a conversation with my mom about a little bit of this, and we were like talking about like caveman and stuff like that. I'm like, Mom, do you not think that God had the ability to have like hundreds of different versions of Earth before we came here, or do you think like we were the first people on Earth? Like, it was a really interesting discussion to like kind of open up your consciousness to say like there have been billions of years and so many different like reincarnations of the Earth planet.
Yeah, time is cyclical, which really changes things.
Of this current age, although it seems like with how we're treating the world and how we're acting, that it sounds as bad as it sounds like some of the worst times that Krishna came to like liberate. I feel like we're living in now, and it's only the beginning, and so it's kind of a little scary. Yeah.
Good thing we got the holy name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any more reflections?
The devotee doesn't need to wait until the next birth for complete liberation.
Mm,
We can experience that in this life.
nice. Where's that from?
You said you read it. I don't know. It was
Yeah.
a purport after, maybe between 4 and 7. I don't know. I can't remember
Great.
which one it was.
Thank you.
Yeah. But that's encouraging.
Very
Even
encouraging.
what Eileen just shared.
Yeah. The doomsayer.
Good. Any more reflections? If you're trying to talk, Pamela, it looks like you're muted. No? Okay. Cool.
Talking to herself.
All right. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Lord Brahma and his list of incarnations of Lord ki jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. All right. So your homework is to read from chapter 7, schedule incarnations with specific functions, and to reflect back what you heard from today or what you read, anything interesting, anything that stands out. There's a lot of jumping around, different leelas. You could even just point out like, I want to know more about that one. I want to know more about the Kurma incarnation, the tortoise, or the fish incarnation, or Nrsingadev, or just like whatever seems cool and interesting, and reflect it back in the chat. And we'll talk about it in chat. We'll talk about it next class. We'll jump in, finish this chapter, Krishna willing. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to you too, crew. Haribol.